Good evening, esteemed colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. I'm Nora from the ACM and your MC and moderator for tonight's session, Forest, Sea and Destructive Heroes, Disturbing Narratives in Javanese Shadow Puppet Theatre. I'd like to take this opportunity to also welcome all of you to the ACM Conversation series. ACM Conversations is a series of monthly talks that brings together leading scholars, cultural practitioners, artisans, and community resource persons in Singapore and from abroad in conversation with curators and educators at ACM. Today, we are delighted and honored to have 4 distinguished speakers who will be sharing more about the living traditions and innovative approaches of Javanese wayang kulit, with wayang cinema as a prime example. A talk like this really complements what we do at the ACM because it can give insights into the intangible cultural heritage of the objects that we put on display in the museum. So first up, I will be introducing all the speakers so that they can continue with their presentations one after another. So first up, we will have Ki Aneng Kiswantoro, who is a dalang musician and composer known for his innovative approach to wayang kulit. Alongside the classical repertoire, he has revived rare forms such as wachinwa, which blends Javanese traditions with narratives drawn from Chinese tales, and created new forms such as wayang cinema. He holds a master's degree in Javanese puppetry from the Indonesian Institute of the Arts, Institut Seni Indonesia at Yogyakarta, where he now lectures. And then following that, we have Dr. Preciosa de Joya, a scholar of Southeast Asian Studies and Philosophy, and a lecturer at the College of Interdisciplinary and Experiential Learning, Singapore University of Social Sciences. Her research focuses on Java, and she teaches courses that explore storytelling as a mode of knowledge-making, including a field-based program in Yogyakarta that engages with local storytelling traditions. She is also a musician and a member of the NUS Singang Laras Gamelan Ensemble. And we're also pleased to have Fani Rickyansyah with us today. He's an award-winning puppeteer, musician, and arts entrepreneur from Yogyakarta, Indonesia. He has performed at festivals in Indonesia and abroad, including the Asia Pacific Traditional Arts Festival in 2015 and the Yangtze River Festival in 2019, and currently teaches at EC in Yogyakarta, where he also earned his master's degree in creative performance. And then finally, to round us off, we have Dr. Mrázek, a scholar of Southeast Asian art and a longtime practitioner of wayang kulit and gamelan. He is the author of Wayang and Its Doubles, Javanese Puppet Theatre, Television and the Internet, published by the NUS Press in 2019. And he has also written widely on Javanese performance. He is currently Associate Professor at the Department of Southeast Asian Studies in NUS and the Founding Director of the NUS Singang Laras Gamelan Ensemble. As we have 4 really exciting presentations to get to, I will not hold you back any longer. So may I invite Mas Aneng to the stage, please?
So I think before Mas Aneng will give his presentation, I'll give a bit of introduction, okay, just to kind of start things a bit. Yes. In 2003, wayang, or Indonesian shadow puppetry, was designated by UNESCO as a masterpiece of oral and intangible heritage of humanity. But despite its global recognition, maintaining and continuing the tradition poses a significant challenge for Indonesians. Wayang culture is a heritage passed down from one generation to the next, encompassing not only material forms, but also values. In Javanese tradition, these are known as tatanan, order, tontonan, spectacle, and tuntunan, guidance. Wayang as tatanan refers to its role in expressing and formulating the structure of social life ethically, aesthetically, and spiritually. Yes? wayang as tontonan means that wayang is a form of entertainment enjoyed by all segments of society, not just adults, but also children who often admire and idolize characters like Gatot Kacha, Gatot Kocho, Bhima, Arjuna, and others. Wayang as tuntunan means that it offers noble teachings, knowledge, and life experiences, both good and bad, to help people live harmoniously with one another and with nature. As times change, so do people's mindsets and behaviors. Today's society tends to think in practical terms. Tremendous advancements in technology and telecommunications have brought about an era in which all tasks can be fulfilled more easily and quickly. Naturally, this change also affects how people view and relate to their culture. Economic pressures and the modern lifestyle have triggered shifts in many aspects of life. Our way of life, their way of life, Indonesians' way of life, which was once rooted in sacredness, morality, spirituality, and ethics, is gradually being replaced by a fast-paced and instant culture. And this cultural shift has inevitably affected the art of wayang, which for centuries has been a central medium of entertainment for the people.
Okay, thank you, Miss Mas Binte. This is actually I cannot say I'm not confident for the playing with English language, but I will try for explain with English. I'm sorry if not clear because this is first I explain with English. Wayang cinema performance. One form of innovation in wayang performance is the wayang cinema. This is a style of wayang that mimics the presentation of cinema, like movie theater, characterized by the audience being seated in a dark room and the layers with screen as the visual medium for shadow, and sound system that supplies pre-recorded and well conceptualized audio, including background music and dialogue. The visual presentation consists of a wayang puppet shadow illuminated by a project light, which is digitally controlled via computer or to product various effects. This concept aims to revive the tradition of shadow play. The combination of shadow, visual, and audio that first to atmosphere of earth's scene enhance the viewer's imagination and help maintain focus and emotional connection with the story. Wayang cinema was first performed in 2014 at the Indonesian Institute of the Art, ISI Yogyakarta, as part of a project of the Department of Puppetry, Faculty of Performing Art. Since then, its popularity has grown significantly. From 2015 to 2018, wayang cinema gained popularity through its collaboration with Bank BCA Semarang in a program called Wayang for Students, which brought the performance to school across the city. between 2020 and 2024, wayang cinema became a partner of Kundo Kabudayan, the culture agency of Yogyakarta, and the Yogyakarta City Culture Office in instilling culture and historical values in younger generation. Wayang cinema has also researched in international stages, performing in Chinese in 2019, in America in 2023, and in Australia in 2024. Wayang as an educational medium. Today, wayang has evolved into the medium that offer insight and solution to political, social, and economic issue. A clear example of this is the wayang cinema performance titled Guardian of the Earth. Product in collaboration with ACM is a community of Bank BCA employed who are passionate about traditional art. ACM provided financial support to complete the production, which was performed in the International Wayang Festival in Bali in 2023. The Guardian of the Earth performance addressed environmental degradation, specifically the dangers of waste, particularly plastic, and to marine life. The story portrays humanity's lack of awareness of the serious consequences of improper waste disposal, as well as the government's limited ability to solve the waste problem, and of the leading cause of environmental damage. Floodwaters carry waste downstream to the ocean, where it accumulated and disrupt marine ecosystem. Fish die in the large number. The ocean is contaminated with mercury, and if left unchecked, this problem is eventually threaten both marine life and human well-being. For example, we have the video. This.
Ayo terus mundur hop mundur hop hey hop hey.
manakah yang bisa mengeluarkanku dari jaring ini? Tolong!
Ayah, ibu, tolong! Aku terjebak dalam plastik ini, tolong! Ayah, ibu, ayah, kamu di mana, ayah? Oh, tidak.
Aduh, ini ada benda apa di mulutku? Aku sampai tidak bisa memakan mangsaku kalau seperti ini. Bagaimana ini, siapa yang bisa menolongku?
Sekarang di laut sudah ada virus ya. Aku mendapatkan satu masker. Aku tidak akan terjangkit oleh virus itu. Hai. Ingat anak-anak, uang lebih manis daripada madu. Hai.
Wayang hadir untuk menyampaikan pesan kebaikan. Sebagai contoh, adalah pesan untuk tidak membuang sampah di sungai yang muaranya menumpuk di laut. Sampah yang terbuang di laut memberikan dampak kerusakan dalam jangka yang panjang karena sampah tersebut tidak mudah terurai. Bahkan sampah di laut dapat membentuk pulau sampah dan termakan oleh biota laut. Serpihan-serpihan sampah menjadi partikel yang mudah tertelan yang menyebabkan banyak biota laut yang mati dengan sampah di dalam perutnya. Ini sangat menyedihkan dan harus kita hentikan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pa Aneng, for that talk. Thank you, Noura, and thank you to the organizers of the ACM Conversation Series for inviting us to share about our work. For my presentation this evening, I'd like to build on Pa Aneng's talk, which emphasized the growing popularity of wayang cinema as a medium of education and moral reflection. As someone who brings students to Yogyakarta for a global learning module on storytelling, I'd like to highlight that what makes wayang cinema appealing to young people is not just its cinematic qualities, but rather how it opens up storytelling to collective participation. Unlike traditional wayang, which relies on the skill and vision of a single dalang or puppeteer, a role that takes decades to master, wayang cinema allows multiple puppeteers to participate in a single performance, making the form more accessible to emerging storytellers. In this way, wayang cinema encourages students to move beyond the role of spectators, engaging them as co-performers, co-storytellers, and co-creators, making it into a truly collective artistic and intellectual endeavor, one that fosters experimentation, dialogue, and a sense of community. And this is exactly the kind of collaboration that has shaped the wayang cinema performance that we'll be staging this Saturday. Our team includes first-time puppeteers, students from SUSS, NUS, members from the Singong Laras ensemble and beyond, as well as Singaporean artists contributing to the visuals and sound design. Now, to give you a glimpse of the process, I'd like to share with you some excerpts of our rehearsals. So the first video that I'd like to show you is a recording of the voices of two characters done by Singong Laras member Faizan Redwan. So you will see how he shifts from Sengkuni, okay, and then he goes to Semar. Yeah, he talks like Semar. So
Yes, my king. It appears that whenever the kite leans to the west, the people in the western part of Mastino fall gravely ill. And when the kite leans to the east, the people in the eastern part of Mastino begin to suffer. The pattern has been consistent. Hmm, my king, if I may, I have also seen this kite, and it does not at all appear like a normal kite. This kite glows brightly, and its power is frightening. But I believe some good will come out from the disaster.
But where? Where is this?
So the second one that I would like to show you, by the way, 501 is actually here. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. The second one shows the puppet movements that we did just yesterday with the voice recording you just saw, along now with visuals done by Zachary Chan and sounds by Rosemary Buang.
My king, I come before you to report. I did some research like you asked, and it appears that the plague is caused by a kite.
What? What did you say? A kite is causing all this disaster? That, that is absurd.
Yes, my king. It appears that whenever the kite leads to the west, the people in the western part of Nastino fall gravely ill. And when the kite leads to the east, the people in the eastern part of Nastino begin to suffer. The pattern has been consistent. My king, if I may, I have also seen this kite, and it does not at all appear like a kite. This kite glows brightly, and its power is frightening.
Okay, so sorry, the I think the audio is not very good, but that's also a way for you to maybe go to the performance and to actually see it. But and also not to spoil the actual performance. I won't show anymore, even if I want to share more. But now I would like to share maybe some context around the story that we are adapting. Our performance on Saturday is based on Bima Bermain Layang Layang, or Bima Flies a Kite. It's a wayang cinema production that I believe premiered in 2024, if I'm not mistaken. While it's inspired by the Mahabharata, this narrative, which has been told by older Dalangs, draws from a local Balinese folk tale about a shepherd boy named Rare Angon, which is linked to Bali's annual kite flying festival. In the story, young Bhima, or better known as Brotoseno, one of the Pandawa brothers, receives a magical kite from the serpent god Naga Basuki. In the 2024 production, the story dramatically starts with the Kuros throwing Brotoseno into the river. So this is it. Okay. So this is so this is the first scene of the story. It dramatically starts like that. But given that the audience is less familiar with the Mahabharata or Javanese wayang characters, an introductory segment I felt was necessary to frame Brotoseno's origin. For example, as the son of Bayu, the god of wind, and also how he was born as a package, one that was so impenetrable that only an elephant could open. According to the story, Brotoseno not only emerges into the world, but slays the elephant, poor animal, and absorbs the creature's immense strength, making him the most feared among the Pandawa and the target of many assassination attempts. So the story actually, when they throw Bhima into the river, that's actually maybe the second assassination attempt on him. Okay, there were also some key ideas in the 2024 Wayang cinema production that I felt could be highlighted more. For example, when Semar in Javanese mythology, as known in Javanese mythology as the wise clown figure, suggests to the king that some good might come from the plague, I realized that a similar motif appears in the Mahabharata. So in this excerpt from the Mahabharata, you can see that Bhima sinks into Nagaloka, the realm of the Nagas. The serpents bite him, but he awakens and tramples the snakes beneath him. And then the serpents report to Naga Vasuki, okay, the serpent that Brotoseno meets under the sea, saying that the child must have been poisoned and that their venom acted as an antidote. And I think this duality is basically, the pharmacon, yeah, both poison and cure. And it echoes exactly what Semar was trying to convey to the king. Now, finally, I'd like to talk about how the ending was conceived. In the 2024 Wayang cinema production, the god Narodo, the problem solver, he's always intuiting the solution. Yeah, so he talks to Bhima and asks him to stop flying the kite, which is causing the pandemic. Bhima replies that he cannot let go of the kite until he finds someone who can satisfy his hunger and quench his thirst. And Narodo, as I said, intuits the best solution. He goes to Kunti, who is the mother of Bhima, and asks her to feed this hungry child. And she does as he asks, without actually knowing that it is her missing son, Bhima. And it was only when Bhima's hunger is fulfilled that his identity is revealed. Now, I personally found this resolution striking in its simplicity. The simplicity of the solution is something that somehow often eludes us today. It also resonates with one of the story's deeper themes, that the solutions we sometimes create, that the solutions that we sometimes have create more harm than good. And in contrast, it is often the smallest acts that begin to repair what's broken. So in many ways, I felt that the ending was actually already perfect. At the same time, one key consideration in adapting the story was how to align it with the theme of play, which is central to the ACM's current exhibition. Initially, one of the suggestions was to stage the well-known episode of the dice game in the Mahabharata, where one of the Pandava brothers is deceived and loses both his kingdom and his wife to the Kaurawa cousins. However, after further discussion, Pa Aneng expressed concern that the core theme of that episode, centered on gambling and humiliation, might not be the most appropriate or constructive entry point for a performance framed around the concept of play. And so instead, Pa Aneng suggested this tale. But while the kite played a prominent role in the story, the theme of play itself wasn't deeply explored in the 2024 Wayang cinema production. But understandably so, because the story's focus lay elsewhere. So how to develop the theme of play while still preserving that emotional clarity, that simplicity of the original story? And eventually, I realized that actually the answer was facing me. It was actually right there. I just never noticed it. I've been going to Jogjakarta several times. I even brought students there. But we would always look at the garbage problem, the social issues. Yeah, but I never noticed that children were actually flying kites. Yeah, so, and then when I was kind of trying to conceive the ending of the story that we'll be staging on Saturday, I finally saw, there are these children flying kites in the rice fields. They're everywhere, yeah? Also in the urban kampung. Sorry, I had these slides, I forgot them. So this is the urban kampung that I brought my students to. And so here you can see, like, for example, these kids, they're flying kites before before prayer in the afternoon. So I'm gonna just show this without audio, okay? So you can see they're there. You can see the ruins there. I'm gonna explain it in a bit. So, so I realized that actually, it's a nice story to incorporate. There used to be houses there, and in front of them was a shared public space where neighbors could gather, chat, and hang their laundry. But recently, that space had been bought by a developer, so displacing the residents. Um, and yet, it kind of struck me how kids, they're very resilient. They like to play, and I was asking one of them, how do you play a kite? Oh, you need two people. You can't just have one flying it. You need someone to hold it. And I realized that Brotoseno, I mean, he has a magical kite, and he needs no one. Yeah. So what if the ending could be where Brotoseno actually learned from a child? Yeah. So so I talked to Pa Aneng about it, and of course, it's kind of strange. I think it struck him strange that Brotoseno would meet a common child, and we were kind of wondering how are we gonna do this, and he looked for for this child, and I said, it looks very royal, not exactly the kind of child that you find in the kampung. So I was like, maybe not, yeah. So, and then a day after that, he made this. Yeah, so I literally was I was quite touched, how he was very open to actually changing, the story, being the guardian of wayang cinema, being the guardian of Javanese puppet theater. So a character was born, yeah, and you will see that on Saturday if you watch us. I think I want to just end. This is another picture. This is again another space in the kampung. It's a gamelan space. Actually, they don't have the back wall because they can't afford it. So when when it rains, basically there's water going into the gamelan instrument, and once yes, and once I think. Jan was asked to teach the kids gamelan. Okay, imagine the weirdness of it. A white person teaching Javanese kids gamelan. So, but yeah, I just end this with this. Jan teaching gamelan kids in Kampung Ledok Tukangan. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
So I will again, this is presentation by Mas Ricky, but again, like with the first presentation, I will read a little bit also so that you have some variety of accents. I think it might be interesting to have an Eastern European accent about Javanese wayang. And to make sure I'm reading the right presentation. The slides are, I think, okay. Bisa dapat yang ini? Bisa. Oh, yeah. Okay. Wayang is a cultural heritage that remains popular to this day. It has many meanings. It is made understood and relevant through creative interpretations by the dalangs, the puppet masters. Wayang can be understood as a bridge of human imagination between the macrocosm and the microcosm. The power of imagination and of the dalang can be already sensed from one of the first mentions of wayang and dalang in an 11th century old Javanese text, the Kakavin Arjuna Vivaha. And this is the quote from the old text. There was someone watching wayang, crying, feeling sad, emotionally shaken. He realized that it was the carved leather that was moving and speaking. Even the word dalang, even the word dalang itself is interpreted in different creative ways. For example, ngudal wulang, so ngudal dalang, ngudal wulang, means to disseminate knowledge or wisdom. Dalang is also said to relate to langlang or nganglang, which means to wander or travel, to wander as a philosopher, artist, or teacher. The episodes of wayang, particularly wayang purwo, are divided into two major epic cycles, which are called Virocharito. They are the Ramayana, chronologically followed by the Mahabharata. They are thought of as different time periods in which each episode is set. The following discussion will focus on the narrative time of Ramayana, specifically the episode or serial titled Romo Tambak, or Romo or Rama builds a causeway.
Okay, I'm sorry, my pronunciation is not good. I will explain about story Romo Tambak. The beginning, after ascending the throne of the kingdom of Pancawati, Prince Rama, Prince Rama, was approached by Prince Wibisana. Wibisana was a brother of the demon king Rahwana, Rama's enemy, but he became an ally of Rama. Rama was seeking a way to reach the kingdom of Alengka or Lanka, but the Minangkodo Ocean was in his way as an obstacle. Wibisana advised to construct a tamba or a causeway or dam that would enable Rama to cross the ocean. Sugriwa, the king of the monkeys, allied with Rama, immediately ordered the monkey warriors to excavate material from Mount Mangliawan to be used as the foundation for the dam. However, Rama has shocked to see the dam construction was constantly thwarted by the raging ocean wave and sea characters. Frustrated, King Rama unleashed the powerful Kiai Brahmasta arrow with the intention to dry up the ocean it with. Batara Baruna, the god of the sea, realized his domain was being destroyed. He escaped from the heavenly realm of Gisi Samudra to negotiate with Rama. God Baruna felt betrayed by Rama, who was an incarnation of the god Vishnu. He accused Rama after making the Minangkodo Ocean, heating and drying up its water and boiling countless sea creatures alive. Realizing his mistake, Rama apologized to God Baruna for his reckless action. Baruna accepted the apology and offered his help by sending aquatic monkey warrior, including Kapi Asrobo is crocodile monkey mutan, Kapi dari muka, fish monkey mutan, Kapi kingkin, crab monkey mutan, and kapi cacing kanil, worm monkey mutan, and kapi taksako is dragon monkey. With their help, the construction of the dam was continued peacefully with less harm to the marine ecosystem of the Minangkabau Ocean.
So the next section is on Sanggit, or interpretation. The puppet masters are sometimes referred to as Pujongo Alit, or minor literati. They frequently create literary works such as wayang stories, tembang, which are songs, or syair, or poems. Beyond literature, they also engage in crafting wayang puppets and even farming. This is done so that they remain productive even when not performing and continue to contribute meaningfully to society. The legendary Dalang, the late Ki Hadi Prayitno, said this about Sanggit, or interpretation, in storytelling. The Dalang is a Pujongo Alit who holds the authority to determine the plot, the essence, and the interpretation of the story or episode being performed. Sanggit, also referred to as Gesanging Anggit, or the life of thought, or the ability to create different interpretations and variations of the story, is a prerogative of the puppet master. It is a way to express ideas and concepts through the performance. The Sanggit is influenced by various factors, such as the puppeteer's own background and education, as well as the circumstances of the particular performance, such as the sponsor's request for certain stories, messages conveyed by the sponsor, the character of the audience, and the conditions of the performance environment. One example of the Sanggit can be used is Romo Tambak, this particular story of Romo building the causeway. Different dalangs may interpret and present the episode differently. For instance, some dalang introduce God Baruna before King Rama releases the Brahmostro arrow, reasoning that rash actions could still be prevented through arrow intervention. The differences can be also very minor, such as differences in the name of the arrow used, whether it is Brahmostro, Gubovijoyo, or Swarageni. Though minor, these differences often spark endless debates, even as the shared consensus remains. Whichever arrow is used, its purpose is the same, to evaporate the ocean. There are some interesting insights when examining the Romo Tambak story, especially the moment when King Romo forces the ocean to heat up and dry up, leading to an encounter with God Baruna, who pleads with him not to destroy marine life. This scene reveals that even in wayang epics, there are reflections on environmental destruction. Romo Vijoyo, or Rama, uses the Swaragani arrow. The word geni itself means fire, to dry the ocean, aiming to make a way for his army to Lanka. However, Baruna and the ocean's inhabitants suffer the consequences. According to one version, Baruna splits the ocean and showed the scorched sea creatures cooked alive due to the intense power of Swaragani arrow. If we think how the puppeteer may interpret the story of Romo Tambak and make it relevant in the present, one way to do it is to relate to the modern issues like global warming. The receding sea in the tale mirrors current real-world phenomena such as rising sea temperatures, rising sea levels, and saltwater intrusion. Thus, through the lens of wayang, the story of Romo Tambak can be seen as an allegory or reflection on environmental responsibility and the consequences of human interference with nature. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I changed microphones. Hopefully it will make my English better. And this is, yeah, that's me. Okay. One of the overarching themes in the first three presentations has been what Mas Aneng some years ago called the flexibility of wayang. The flexibility, he said, is what allows wayang to remain popular and relevant in the present. One manifestation of this flexibility are the many creative innovations and transformations in both the form and the stories of wayang, which includes the case of wayang cinema. But the flexibility is also deeply part of the wayang tradition. To perform a story well requires the puppeteer to understand the particular place of performance, the audience, the issues currently relevant to them, as well as the larger social, political, or economic issues and problems of the times. The puppeteer must interpret and adapt the old wayang story in such a way as to make it speak to the present and to his audience. Often, he needs to incorporate messages or ideas from the sponsor of the performance, and he might want to please, or at least not offend, other potential patrons. Moreover, each dalang is expected to have his own style and ideas and express them through his version of the story. Constant creative innovation and flexibility are thus nothing new. They are central to the tradition. Examples of how this is done can be found in all three previous presentations, and I am going to discuss one more case. In the first part of this year, I had a chance to stay in Jogja, the same place that Mas Aneng and Mas Ricky are from, and also that Precious was talking about. And I decided to go back to something I have not done for more than 20 years, learning and performing wayang kulit. I decided to take lessons with Mas Aneng. He said he wanted me to perform in Jogja, and of course I could not refuse. I chose the classical story about the clearing of the Mertani forest because I found it intriguing and I wanted to understand it better by learning to perform it. Because I studied wayang before and performed it abroad, I already knew that learning the story will also mean learning how to adapt it to my own ideas, my times, and different audiences. Let me briefly summarize the main line of the traditional story, keeping in mind that every time it is performed somewhat differently. It is part of stories drawing on the Mahabharata epic, in which the 5 Pandava brothers and their cousins, the 100 Kaurava brothers, vie for throne. The Kaurava brothers and their allies try in different ways to get rid of the Pandava. In my episode, when the Pandava brothers claim that they are the heirs to the throne, the Kaurava delay a resolution of the conflict by presenting the Pandava with a small part of the kingdom as a temporary settlement. The land that the Pandava are given is the Mertani forest, which is known to be extremely dangerous and full of powerful spirits. The Kaurava hope that the Pandava will perish there. Nonetheless, the Pandava take on the task of clearing the forest and establishing themselves there. They begin to clear the forest. In an iconic scene, Brotoseno, this is the same guy that Precious talked about, the physically strongest of the Pandava, is seen uprooting trees represented by the tree of life puppets. Depending on the version of the story, the Pandava have to fight ogres or forest spirits. Eventually, in another key scene, the 5 Pandava brothers face the 5 spirit guardian of the forest, who agree to give up their current existence and task, and they enter into the bodies of the Pandava brothers and become one with them, while the forest reveals itself as a magnificent kraton, a palace, and a city. It is explained that what appeared to be a forest was actually always a city built by gods, which was at one point in the past transformed into the forest. The incarnation of the 5 Pandava princes is visually and intellectually striking because the forest spirits who guard the forest, are almost identical in appearance and behavior to the Pandovo princes who cleared the forest. And after the incarnation, the Pandovo princes adopt their names. The forest, now transformed, becomes the Pandovo's new kingdom, Ngamarto. Part of my initial interest in the story concerns another of our shared themes, which is the relationship between humans and the natural world, as it is depicted in wayang. In the story, clearing of the forest by the various Pandovo princes is the initial act that leads to the foundation of their kingdom. This resonates with Javanese historical narratives, where the founding of cities and kingdoms always begins with the clearing of a forest. The word babat means clearing a forest, and it is the word for a historical text, or a chronicle, suggesting that clearing the forest is a fundamental act of human history. Curiously, this opposition between wilderness and civilization and the notion of advancement of civilization as the clearing of wilderness seems very similar to Western colonial and post-colonial meta-narratives of civilizing the colonies or, in the post-colonial era, development. For the Javanese, as much as for colonial Europeans, the jungle is the epitome of otherness and danger, and civilization is based on destroying nature. In the Javanese narrative, moreover, the very existence of the particular dangerous forest is, one might say, mystified. Because the forest is revealed to be, in fact, an enchanted palace, it is as if the forest never existed, and as if it was originally a palace or a city. Clearing the forest is almost like when in fairy tales a prince liberates a princess or a whole kingdom from a spell of black magic, as in the Sleeping Beauty story. It also resonates with colonial narratives in which the colonialists exploiting the nature and people in colonized lands would claim that they do it for the good of the colonized people or of humanity, rather than for profit, as if they were saving the colonized people by civilizing them. These narratives, in short, seem very convenient for anyone who has the power to civilize and develop and make profit on development, and they represent civilization and development as a blessing to the world. Wayang is sometimes said to promote feudal mentality, with emphasis on hierarchy, obedience, and the celebration of kings and princes. And if we are thinking of the flexibility of wayang, how stories are adapted to the needs and circumstances, one might suspect that even the most traditional version of the story is already an adaptation to the particular needs, particularly the needs of the feudal ruler. This year, while I was taking my wayang lessons, learning to perform the story, and thinking about how to adapt it, particularly for a performance for audiences in Jogja, I was at the same time doing research on arts and architecture in contemporary Jogja. I was particularly interested in radical recent developments in the city's urban landscape. The developments included the current Sultan's decision to rebuild several kilometers of fortification, most of which have disappeared centuries ago. This involved evicting many people and destroying whole communities in the name of increasing the splendor of the palace. It was claimed that the aim is to return it to the original condition when the palace was built. This act was a part of a broader initiative to rebuild and clean up Jogja, to make it a bit more like Singapore, which many locals see as a way to reassert the Sultan's political and economic power. The initiative is backed up by a widespread belief that the Sultan has great mystical or magical power, and particularly that criticizing him or resisting him leads to bad things happening to the critic. As I was learning to perform my story of clearing a forest and building a palace, maybe because I don't have a palace, it was difficult not to connect it to what was happening in the city and to the concerns of many of my friends, some of whom were evicted from where they have lived for generations. In the story, as I finally performed it in last May, people found or imagined connections between the clearing of the story in the forest, between the clearing of the forest in the story and the clearing of the whole neighborhoods in Jogja, as well as a critical reflection on the wayang medium itself as the promoter of certain images of nature and royal palaces, or more generally, political and economic power. At the same time, with environmental issues relevant in Jogja as much as elsewhere, my version of the story questioned the relationship between humans and nature. In many performances, no animals are represented in the narrative about clearing a forest. My version introduced and emphasized animals and imagined their perspective into the story. In the opinion of the wild pig, I'm not talking about myself here, the puppeteer is the greatest enemy of the animals because he promotes and legitimizes the clearing of forests and development of palaces by those in power. Not surprisingly, while the wild pig was killed by one of the Pandava princes, in the end, the ghost of the wild egg killed the puppeteer. I feel that my death was justified, and it was a kind of happy end to the performance. I will be performing the same story on Friday at NUS. In Jogja, I performed it in Javanese, and now I have decided to try to perform it in English. This is a difficult challenge, and it is also possible that the story will be adapted to the different place and audience in other ways as well. If you want to know more, and if you want to find out whether the puppeteer will survive this time, please come to watch on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all the presentations, and I'm so glad we actually have time to have a little bit of dialogue and a Q&A with the audience. But if I can just take the privilege of being the organizer to ask the first question, and this is a question that is for any one of you to maybe answer. I'm struck by what Pak Aneng said about the flexibility of wayang is what makes it continue to be relevant or popular amongst audiences. And I mean, if you think about it, there's really been many different ways that wayang kulit has been translated, and even in other forms of wayang. I mean, I've come across, for example, within wayang kulit Kelantan, there's been a modernized version of Star Wars translated into wayang kulit, which was a project by Tin Toy Chua, and the dalang, I believe, was Muhammad Din Saleh. And then also in wayang beber, which is a different form of wayang, but there's been contemporary versions of it. One of it is actually this painter who is based in Yogyakarta, Dani Iswardono. He's also done very contemporary paintings of wayang beber that shows contemporary urbanscapes. And he works with another dalang to kind of perform back in the pasars around Yogyakarta. So, given that wayang is so flexible, I'm just wondering, what is the fundamental essence of wayang that if once removed would no longer be considered wayang? So that's something I just want to ask.
Mungkin nanti Pak Jan bisa menjelaskan. Jadi wayang fleksibel itu karena wayang sudah menjadi media education for all and everything. And then wayang ada tuntunan, tatanan, dan tontonan. Nah, setiap wayang memang saat ini ada degradasi karena wayang lebih kuat dengan tontonan, lebih kuat hanya untuk hiburan. Tetapi pada dasarnya setiap pertunjukan cerita wayang pasti ada sesuatu atau ada makna yang ingin disampaikan. Terkait dari situ sebetulnya konsep kami membuat wayang sinema dalam rangka untuk membuat simple konsep atau membuat simple nilai-nilai yang akan ditawarkan. Supaya kalau ketika pertunjukan konvensional itu terlalu lama dan terlalu panjang, sehingga nilai-nilai yang ditawarkan menjadi tidak jelas atau tidak mengenai sasaran kan gitu. Akhirnya dengan konsep wayang sinema saya membuat supaya nilai-nilai itu bisa mudah diterima. Nah, wayang yang tidak bisa dihilangkan nilai-nilai tersebut. Karena setiap cerita pasti ada sesuatu yang ingin disampaikan. Dalam konsep wayang sinema cerita tidak berubah. Tetapi inti sari dari cerita tetap sama, cuman pengemasan pertunjukannya lebih simpel dan dibuat supaya anak muda atau semuanya itu tertarik untuk menonton sampai selesai seperti itu.
So, Mas Aneng answer specifically using the example. Mas Aneng answered specifically the example of wayang cinema, and he went back to the terms that he used before, tontonan, tuntunan, and tatanan, and particularly tontonan as a show and also entertainment, as opposed to tuntunan as something providing guidance, something providing some deeper message. And he said that these days, more and more, what's important or what dominates is tontonan, the entertainment, and sometimes the message disappears. And what he feels is important in the case of wayang cinema, that what is the essence, as Nora was saying, is actually the message that has to be communicated. So even if the medium changes, even if one uses a projector and many things change, it's actually that some kind of message or teaching or idea is preserved. So it would seem in that sense it's not so much the medium itself, but really the message. Yeah. I by the way, one student of mine asked, I forgot if it was Mas Ricky or someone in Jogja, the same question. I think it was when we had a workshop, wayang workshop in Mas Aneng's house, and he answered that the one thing that cannot be done away are the wayang puppets. So I think different dawangs would have probably different answers. Ya, mungkin Mas Ricky mau menambah atau apa yang tidak bisa dihilangkan supaya tetap wayang?
Oke. Wayang adalah sebuah sarana untuk menyampaikan pesan, tetapi dari kata wayang sendiri berarti tentang shadow, bukan berarti shadow itu adalah bayangan atau shadow bayangan, tetapi bayangan is imajinasi. Jadi segala sesuatu yang dibawa, pesan-pesan yang dibawa oleh wayang itu semua ya itu adalah wayang. Jadi wayang tidak akan pernah berubah jika dia bisa membangun imajinasi penontonnya, walaupun bentuknya seperti apapun.
I love to talking to dalangs because you never get the same answer. It's very creative. So answer from Mas Ricky is that he connects it to the word wayang, which wayang can refer to shadow, but also to imagination or image. That's why our kind of event is called Pesta Bayangan, which can mean the festival of shadows, but also the festival of imagination. And he says that for him, as long as wayang stimulates imagination, in that sense, that's enough for it to be wayang. So that's the essential thing. So it's not even any particular message, any particular medium, any particular story, but it's this emphasis on stirring imagination.
Okay, and can we invite questions from the floor? Anyone? Yes. Okay.
Maybe while we are waiting for the microphone, I can't resist talking. Just to add, because I have been doing research on wayang for quite a while, and also on wayang being adapted to different media, like wayang, like television and internet. And one thing that I found is this kind of tension and conflict and dilemma. When people innovate in wayang, on the one hand, they always want to do something new and creative, something that would attract people. But at the same time, there are sometimes pulled back to keep the traditional medium. So this question that was raised is actually something of a dilemma for puppeteers, and I think it's often a way which wayang can't really be. It's in a way stuck with itself. It's restrained by its own, existing technicalities, but at the same time, it always wants to develop. So it's this interesting tension and struggle. Yeah.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much for a most wonderful talk for the from the panel. Now, I've watched a lot of wayangs, whether you would call it wayang, in India, in Southeast Asia, and in Vietnam, in Thailand, and Indonesia. The Hindu epic Ramayana. How is it interpreted in Indonesia? I want you to answer one question for me before I go on to the next question. What happens to Sita in your interpretation of Ramayana at the end?
By you mean someone here?
Anyone.
Anyone, okay.
Yes.
Jadi pertanyaan tentang Ramayana, apa yang terjadi dengan Sita pada akhirnya?
Okay. Okay. Sinta go back to Rama. Sinta tetap kembali dan menikah dengan Rama. Tapi sebelum dia menikah dengan Rama, Rama ingin mengetahui apakah si Sinta itu still suci, masih suci, dengan cara dia dibakar. Jika dia tidak dibakar, jika dia terbakar berarti dia sudah pernah disentuh oleh Rahwana. Tapi kalau misalkan dia tidak terbakar, dia masih suci dan dia akhirnya menikah dengan Rama kembali. Dan mempunyai 2 anak kembar.
Yes. So the answer is that Sita does go back to Rama, but before she does it, she has to be, her purity has to be tested, and she goes back. They are married again, and they have 2 children, according to this version. I understand there are many different possibilities.
Yes, I'm concerned about that because the interpretation in the original one in India, Sita dies, she disappears from the face of the earth because she has been tainted by Ravana. So I was wondering whether this forgiveness that you find in Indonesia and certainly also in Thailand has something to do with the culture itself. You know, this culture of love, forgiveness. So Sita eventually is reconciled with Rama. That's my question. Thank you.
Rama and Sinta, kalau dalam Jawa itu memang secara keseluruhan both story Ramayana or Mahabharata only stay with foundation mythology like air, api, bumi, dan juga udara. Nah, Sinta itu dalam mitologi itu merepresentasikan adalah kesetiaan. Dia adalah sifat bumi. Makanya ending Sinta ditelan bumi. Dan Rama itu adalah karena dia titisan Dewa Wisnu, dia adalah sang surya dari matahari. Nah, matahari dan bumi sebenarnya itu selalu berdampingan dan dia selalu memberikan kekuatan. Seperti itu. Jadi makanya Sinta sendiri harus disucikan dengan api. Supaya dia mencapai puncak dari kesetiaan itu sendiri. Nah, seperti itu. Jadi endingnya memang Sinta matinya ditelan bumi karena dia adalah simbol dari bumi. Ya, keluar lagi, hidup lagi. Nah, gitu.
So this is example of Javanese mystical interpretation, where Sita, because actually Sita means also soil. So it represents, basically different characters represent different elements. Sita represents the soil or the earth, and Vishnu, Rama as incarnation of God Vishnu, he says represents the sun and the fire. And so in returning to the earth, Sita basically returns to her element, and then she's purified by fire, which is Rama. So basically it becomes a very mystical, elementary, literal elementary interpretation, and in which there is not really so much conflict or a moral judgment, but a much more kind of fundamental representation of cosmic forces, maybe. Yeah. I don't know if I should add, but I feel like you mentioned the original story in India, and I think it's definitely true that all the stories in wayang are quite radically transformed and localized. And you ask whether it reflects, let's say, local culture, and I would say definitely. I mean, I can think of many examples. Actually, the Romo Tambak story, we have also talked about it. If you look at the Indian version of Ramayana, there is a extremely vivid, explicit, violent depiction of Rama boiling the sea, and it goes through the different kinds of fish and seafood, which is not seafood yet, being boiled and suffering and running. So it's very violent. And in many Javanese, and this is in the old Javanese Ramayana, in the Kakavin, it's still kind of like that. But if you look at wayang today, that's often avoided. And we have actually a little bit pushed Pak Aneng because we are talking about this story, or to show it a little bit more, because there are different versions. But very often, like Pak Aneng performed this, I think it's on YouTube, maybe about a year ago in Java. And there is no, the Rama never even threatens the sea. So the violence, the conflict seems to be avoided. So it's just one more of many examples that the stories are kind of adapted. In my story as well, it's a very mystical idea of these forest spirits merging into the Pandava. There is nothing like that in India. There is clearing of forests, but it's very different. Yeah, so definitely lots of localization.
The Hindu culture. So they're being put down because she has been tainted.
Yeah. There's also possible, yeah.
Hi, thank you firstly for your insights. I think I found a lot of your interpretations very enlightening. Especially how you've also made broke the fourth wall a little bit, and also the critique on modern civilization, even the intimate experiences of your friends facing evictions and stuff. I think what I wanted to ask is, how do you take into consideration cultural sensitivities while adapting your own version of the story? Because especially you want to stay true to your story, but sometimes you don't want to cross a different culture. You also want to be respectful while telling it. Yeah, so how do you balance that? Yes, what are the questions you ask yourselves in your research and adaptations?
Is it a question for me or?
Just
Yeah. So maybe I can say first that it's not easy, because like when I was in Jogja, I felt I had many friends who were affected and who would kind of, by the things I was talking about. So I wanted to, in a way, engage also with them and be also truthful to myself and my own feeling. But at the same time, I didn't want to offend any people, because lots of people also disagree and it's very controversial. So I ended up, I think the way many people do end up, which is like I went halfway. Sometimes I wasn't entirely direct. I think I tried to not to be, I tried to be not to be too offensive, but at the same time risk a little bit. And I think sometimes there are ways, for example, humor. If you keep laughing, and if it's the wild boar talking, there's a better chance that you don't get stoned or something. But Interestingly, I mean, I got very good reception, and I think, or maybe the people who didn't like it just kept it for themselves, or just thought it's a crazy foreigner, so it's okay. Yeah. And now I will be performing in Singapore, which is again quite interesting because in some ways even more because I think in Indonesia I would just get deported from Indonesia, but here I have a nice job, so I think I will try to be very careful. And yeah, I will be just talking about mythical kingdoms, and any similarities are purely coincidental. Mungkin pertanyaannya tentang kalau adaptasi cerita atau kalau sangkit, bagaimana dengan kalau misalnya ada supaya tidak ada orang tersinggung atau seperti itu. Kalau misalnya ada pesan yang mungkin ada pro dan kontranya.
Kalau biasanya yang terjadi di Jawa, itu kita menanggapi permintaan dari audien, dari penanggap. Biasanya si penanggap itu mempunyai sesuatu yang ingin disampaikan. Oleh karena itu biasanya cerita juga disesuaikan dengan momen, disesuaikan dengan arah tujuan dari si penanggap itu. Akhirnya bahwa disitulah terjadi sanggit. Bagaimana ketika kepentingan-kepentingan audien dalam menanggap wayang itu ditentukan cerita, dan nanti setelah selesai cerita yang ingin dirasakan penanggap atau doa-doa yang akan diharapkan itu bisa terjadi sama penanggapnya. Seperti itu. Makanya di situ biasanya terjadi sanggit. Salah satu contoh saya pernah diminta suatu ceritanya saya sebenarnya tidak tahu secara keseluruhan, tapi cerita itu memang diminta untuk khusus dari momen permintasan tersebut. Seperti itu. Itu diminta lahirnya Semar gitu. Tetapi pada saat itu ketika kita mau melaksanakan pertunjukan, akhirnya diminta ganti, terus karena lahirnya Semar itu dirasa terlalu berat, akhirnya diganti dengan Petruk jadi ratu kan gitu.
So Mas Aneng says that the Sanggit is very often kind of initiated to accommodate the messages from the patron or the sponsor of the performance, and also sometimes what the audience kind of, if there are issues that the Dalang feels are important in the audience. And he says sometimes he would be asked to perform a particular story, and then just at the performance, suddenly the sponsor may change his mind and tells him to perform another story. But often it's really to, I think the sponsor's messages are very important. There is, if I can kind of comment on that, there has been some interesting also writings about, I think, true points that the puppeteers are not really artists in the Western cultural sense, that we kind of think in the West of romantic artists as criticizing everything and being very independent. And I think that those values are not necessarily so much present for the Dalang. I think that the Dalang naturally is paid to present certain messages. And, there is not this kind of rebellious sense that you would go against the sponsor, the way I would probably always go. But I think very often the Dalang is a spokesman for the patron. At the same time, because the performance is always a play and it has lots of space, the Dalang wants to please the audience. So this was, for example, when I was watching Wayang already under New Order, under Suharto, puppeteers would be sponsored by the regime, which was quite strong in censorship and everything. But the regime also wanted to attract people. So the puppeteers were often quite free in criticizing actually the regime. So there will be this entertainment which become this space of play, of back and forth criticism. And the puppeteer must be quite diplomatic to make it possible. But as long as he's popular, as long as he's a good puppeteer, actually he can say quite a lot. And again, things like humor and stuff like that allows people to Yeah, it creates a space for interaction and some degree of criticism, but there is not the same desire to be like violently critical. Like, as I say, I think in Western images of art, sometimes it's like that. Yeah.
Yeah, in my case, actually that was one issue that I had. Yeah, like changing the ending, and I when we went to Paaneng and told him about it, I think well he was smiling, but it was a bit of a shock because I think Brotoseno never. I mean, in the world of wayang, basically. It's kind of unimaginable that he would kind of meet this ordinary boy but we did try to keep certain things like and I don't want to spoil it for you, but like for example Brotoseno has a very deep voice, like and he's seen as a child in the story, but he's like whoa, so it's very yeah, that's him. He's the voice of Brotoseno. So but these little things, and I'm sure the audience will be shocked by it, but we've tried to keep it because this is what the character, how the character is. But yeah, going back to the ending, that was the moment when I realized that basically when I saw the boy that he was suggesting, and he had all this royal, I realized that it is very hierarchical, the wayang itself, yeah, and to puncture it by introducing certain elements. And I thought maybe in the world of wayang cinema, maybe it's possible. But again, I'm going back to the generosity, yeah, of the guardian, yeah, and this is exactly how I guess wayang survives, yeah, like it evolves, and because also of their openness to allow certain things like these. Yeah.
Saya juga dulu pernah diminta untuk melakonkan, tapi tokoh yang terpenting adalah Banteng. Handoko Tutuk Sito, karena yang menangkap adalah PDIP kan gitu. Jadi sentral karakternya adalah Banteng.
So once he was asked to perform a play, any play, and the requirement was that the central character has to be buffalo, yeah,
Buffalo,
because buffalo is the symbol of the PDIP, one of the parties, Megawati's party.
Yeah.
So there are requirements like these. Yeah, and wayang is very often used for political campaigning and stuff like that. So it's kind of naturally in the service of anyone who can pay for it. I'm offering my services here by,
Sedikit saja. Jadi bagaimana kita supaya tidak membuat seseorang itu tersinggung atau terkena kritikan saya oleh dalang itu terlalu pedas, itu kita harus tahu tentang kata-kata Jawa, desa mawa cara, negara mawa tata. Di desa kita mempunyai adat istiadat dan di kota pasti ada peraturan. Jadi dalang itu harus tahu tentang adat istiadat di desa, harus tahu tentang apa yang sedang populer atau peraturan apa yang sudah dibuat oleh pemerintah. Jadi itu kita harus tahu dan mana batasan kita menyanggit sebuah lakon untuk menyampaikan pesannya. Ya, juga tergantung tempatnya.
So another way not to, as he put it, not to make the criticism too spicy or not to offend anyone is to be always aware also where one performs and what are the laws or regulations and also probably implied regulations. So that's, I think, all part of being a dalang, being kind of conscious of these things and navigate them.
Maybe we just have time for one last question. Oh, in front.
Hi, question for Preciosa. Right. It's a question about spectatorship. So Indonesia is modernizing in such a rapid pace, and I'm wondering what the spectatorship is like for wayang kulit today. Has it changed over the years? Because from my knowledge, I think wayang kulit started in a very village communal setting, right, where people came together and they had very basic props in order for a show to happen. But today, what is the expectations of spectatorship like, across Indonesia, and so given that it's such a diverse country?
I think I'm actually literally but yeah, I think I will try to answer this, but actually I think you might be more of an expert, right? But it has changed. If I understand your question, yeah, it has a bit changed because people, they don't really want to stay very late. That's one. So wayang performances have become quite shorter. Okay, there's also an element of religion there, that before it would go until dawn. Yeah. But now it's kind of they try to stop before the prayers. And also there's also the live streaming, so that people can actually watch at their homes easier. So but I think Jan in his book he's talked about this, that performance, wayang performance is actually also defined by the presence, yeah, of people in at that moment, yeah, them laughing and sleeping and eating, chatting while performing, yeah. So but maybe would you like to add
Yeah,
to
maybe
that?
just about the diversity, that wayang, like Javanese wayang, is really pretty much only for Javanese, so it wouldn't be for everyone in Indonesia, except that the Javanese are all over. But also within Java, if you are in Jogja and talk to especially men, quite a few of them love wayang and go to performances. But you also find some who are totally not interested. If you go to certain circles, they don't care about wayang. So it's very alive for quite a few people, but not for everyone. Sometimes I use the analogy, or at least for me, being from another faraway land. But I think in Europe, for example, if you think of classical music, if you want to get to certain places and times and in certain circles, it's still very popular, very much alive. But for many people don't care for it as well. So I would say it's a bit similar in that sense. Yeah.
Perubahan penonton itu kalau dulu orang melihat nonton wayang itu banyak yang merasa nyaman di belakang layar, di belakang kelir, melihat shadow itu. Jadi tamu-tamu undangan yang penting, tamu-tamu kehormatan yang penting itu pasti dia akan berada di belakang kelir. Itu mas sekarang masih terasa ketika pada pagelaran wayang di daerah gunung, daerah pegunungan seperti itu. Dan sekarang perpindahannya adalah dia lebih nyaman di depan, karena di depan banyak estetika yang ditawarkan. Seperti sekarang alatnya bagus-bagus, terus pengerawitnya itu juga muda-muda seperti itu, sindennya cantik-cantik. Nah, apalagi sekarang pakai berdiri, goyang seperti itu. Tapi kalau yang nonton di belakang kelir sekarang sudah jarang sekali seperti itu. Nah, terkait dengan seperti estetika yang berubah sampai saat ini, kita dengan Mas Ricky itu sebetulnya ingin mencoba untuk menawarkan kembali konsep shadow, konsep bayangan, di mana ketika nonton bayang-bayang itu ternyata itu lebih bisa dinikmati dan emosionalnya lebih dapat. karena hanya konsentrasi dengan shadow dan audio. Dengan mungkin suasananya lebih gelap ya, karena kalau di belakang clear dia hanya bisa melihat screen seperti itu dengan audio yang mungkin bagus atau iringan yang memadai, itu lebih bisa mengimajinasi penonton itu sendiri.
So Mas Aneng says that one change which concerns audience, but also how wayang is watched, is that in the past, according to him, and this is different people have different stories, but according to him, in the past, people were watching actually the shadows. This is how it's still done, for example, in Bali or in Kelantan. And they would see primarily the shadows and would hear the story. And then gradually today, in many performances, there is not even it's not even possible to watch the shadows. The emphasis is on watching from the side where the puppeteer is, because there are many attractive things to watch. The puppeteer himself, to watching how he manipulates the puppets, also the orchestra, and there is much more emphasis on making the front of the stage appealing. There are the female singers, sometimes they stand up and dance. So it has kind of changed the side, to the front side, and which is often late. So it's a very different kind of performance, and that's the wayang that's popular today. And also actually here we are kind of following that mostly. And so that's that's one change. And at the same time, some of the innovative forms of wayang, like the wayang cinema that he's doing, he's trying to go back or kind of to revive the experience of watching the shadows. And of course, it's very different because it also has these very new elements of cinema, but basically the wayang cinema, as you saw, doesn't show the gamelan or doesn't even have often gamelan, but it's exploring again the way of playing with shadows. And as he says, there is a different feeling to it, what you can communicate with shadows that maybe can be in some ways more touching or a little bit different than when you see the more like this kind of often brightly lit, spectacular stage with the gamelan instrument. So a different experience that he's trying to revive. So it's kind of interesting that going forward sometimes means going back, as we crabs know.
Okay. I hope you join me to thank all of the speakers on stage: Dr. Preciosa de Joya, Ki Aneng Kiswantoro, Dr. Mrázek, and Fani Rickyansyah. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening.